You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Welcome to Modern Musicology. My name is Alan, and of my co-hosts, we are joined today by Rob Levy. What's up, Rob?
Sup? Hey, kids.
Unfortunately, Stephanie is not with us this week because she and her husband Bob are playing a gig tonight. So we're very excited about that, and we will share video from that show and recent shows too that they've been doing with other people. Got video that somebody took of that got shared today, so I'll put that out on our socials so people can see that. But since Stephanie is not here, we are joined once again by our great friend JM Tuffley. How's it going, buddy?
That's a pretty good reason for Stephanie to not be here. I'd be looking forward to seeing the video. I'm good. How are you guys?
Excellent. You're at this point kind of like our Joan Rivers. Anytime Johnny Carson needed to go on vacation, Joan Rivers filled in. So we are happy to have you on board today, Joan.
I needed something with shoulder pads, I think. Even though it's an audio podcast, probably. Imagine, listeners at home, imagine I'm wearing something with large shoulder pads. It'll work for you. It's fine.
Right on. So the big news this week is the drop of Beyonce's brand new country single and the uproar that has caused. So let's just set a very general timeline here. She shows up at the Grammys dressed like a cowgirl, basically. A very fancy cowgirl because it's Louis Vuitton and very elegant, but cowgirl nonetheless. And the rumors began, and the rumors of a new album had been circulating anyway. And Super Bowl comes around. They put out a commercial that basically advertises a brand new Beyonce country album. The single, Texas Hold'em, has now become the first #1 single on the country charts by a black woman. So that has stirred up a little bit of controversy, a little bit of clapback from some country fans. And we're going to talk about all of that stuff. So the basic question, first and foremost, is what do you think of this new Beyonce?
Texas Hold'em, of the two she put out, not my favorite one.
Really?
It is a good party record. It's a party record, and it kind of fits into sort of, I guess, the bro country-esque sort of stuff that is populating country radio now. But 16 Carriages is like really, really good.
Interesting.
Like 16 Carriages is really good. I wish they'd put a little more promotion on that one, but I could see why they want to do Texas Hold'em.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But it fits more in line with what they're playing on modern country radio. And 16 Carriages is kind of a more traditional kind of a ballad sort of song, which I feel really works for her, but I can see why they went with the other one.
That's very interesting because of the two, 16 Carriages is my least favorite of the two.
I kept doing that too. I kept almost saying 16 Candles.
It just hasn't grabbed me. I mean, it's okay, but it doesn't really, it's not selling me yet.
It's a little more of a vocal workout, I think, for her, which is really what you want from Beyonce. You really want the fireworks.
Yeah. Rob, what do you think?
I love the 16 Carriages.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Mainly because to me, it is more steeped in the legacy of what I consider country music.
That's interesting.
And it harkens back to the roots of country music, which comes out of, black music from the South. It feels more like blues. It feels more sort of rooted in earlier traditions of country. I don't mind the single. But when I say Beyonce is doing a country single, that is the song that is in my head of what it's going to sound like. It sounded exactly like what I expected it to sound. Whereas 16 Carriages, I think, really kind of surprised me of like, okay, she's not just doing this to slap her name on a country album and sell records. She's like not screwing around. That shows the commitment and the reverence for the material too. And I think the other one is just purely sort of to fix the label. And I think, I don't think it's necessarily her singing or anything. I just think it's the production for the single. I just think it's a little overproduced.
I think they both are. And I think that may be the thing that is kind of like being a barrier for me with 16 Carriages. Maybe lyrically, maybe song structure sort of harkens back to traditional country, but I think the production doesn't. And I think maybe that's what's got me hung up on this, whereas Texas Hold'em sounds country-ish. You know what I mean? It's got all the hallmarks of a country song, even if they are a bit overproduced. But, you're going to get that with a Beyonce record.
Yeah, I think any of us that lived through the nightmarish hell of hearing Cotton Eye Joe are terrified whenever anyone says they're making a country record. That's just kind of like, that frightens us so much that, we have to really be shown that that's what we want, is like a real country record and not like a knockoff, right?
Yeah.
Not that Beyonce would do a knockoff. The single is perfectly fine as a single. It serves its purpose as a single. It is designed to be a pop record that goes on the charts. But I want to know that she's all in, and that's what I got in the other one, And now it's like, okay, this is the commitment. She's putting in the work, and she actually knows the material. Like, this is not just this isn't the thing she's doing for the sake of doing it. She really does have an affinity for country music when I listen to the second single.
She's from Texas though, right?
Yeah.
So she would have grown up in that environment and with those traditions and hearing that music on the radio as a kid. So I feel like, she really does have this
that's what she's kind of been saying in the run up to this. Like, that's kind of where a lot of her influences is from within country music. It's part of the soup. And one of the things that she's also said in the run up to some of this stuff is, and how she's framing, I guess, what's now the Renaissance projects. Yeah. Is that, all of that she's doing is kind of putting her spin and sort of putting a light on unrepresented peoples and their places in genres in music. Because a lot of Renaissance Part 1 is very much club disco stuff. And it looks like if Renaissance Part 2 is all country, that also kind of, because of the influence that black musicians had in the country realm, and sort of sometimes had to kind of not present themselves as themselves. I know Rob had mentioned somewhere Charlie Pride, where, he got a lot of his big deal. A lot of his audience didn't initially know that he was black.
That's very true.
So that sort of thing, and how it came out of the blues tradition and that sort of thing. And that 16 Carriages track is actually the thing that makes me really intrigued by this record.
Okay.
I seem to remember Charlie Pride winning a Grammy and showing up, and nobody knew, sort of like that. He was black. And he was black, and it was kind of like this collective, like, kind of thing. I know that the record labels certainly tried to hide that at the beginning from DJs, particularly in the South. And then I think through his persistence, he really plowed away at that. So,
yeah. Women writers used to have to use male pseudonyms in order to get their stuff published. It's just part of that whole sad fabric of our country where you have to hide certain things from certain parts of the audience. I hope that we are beyond that now. But, when you look at some of the reaction from some country fans to Beyonce's new single, you have to wonder, are we beyond that? Because she has gotten some blowback on this, and some big names have come in and stepped up in support of her, one of them being Dolly Parton. So, you have to wonder, what's so different now about Beyonce doing a country record and Darius Rucker making a move into country music? Is it that Beyonce isn't convincing people? Does it seem like a stunt? Is it not what people, is it not a song that resonates with people? What is it? What's the difference?
Well, and this is especially relevant coming off of the moment that we had with Tracy Chapman at the Grammys, right?
Yeah.
I really think it's just public perceptions of what black is, which is really stupid, because there are people that don't really think of Darius Rucker as being African American, but
Yeah.
everyone thinks of Beyonce as being African American. And I think that's complete, horsepucky, but I think that's sadly the times we're living in. And I think that a lot of these people, outside the fact that they're culturally stupid, it could just be the fact that they heard the record first, didn't know it was Beyonce, and then when they realized they liked it and then realized it was Beyonce, they got ticked off. I think there is some of that too, because the first time I heard it, I caught it sort of like mid-play when I was out in public. And then I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I heard it was the Beyonce record. So that was my first hearing of it. I didn't hear it labeled as this is the new Beyonce record.
Yeah.
Which in a way is the best way to hear music, right? Is not being associated with a particular ethnicity or artist tag to it, just hearing it and knowing what it is.
Right.
I wish they did like sneaking out white labels again. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Or the thing where they used to put out just records to radio and not tell people who the artist is.
Yes.
They just let them figure it out.
Yeah. But I mean, when you hear the vocal, it sounds like her.
Yes.
I don't think it would have fooled anybody for very long. I think that any DJ that was previewing the record before they played it on the air would have at least suspected that it's her.
If they had any sensibilities for pop music. If they didn't,
True.
There are people that have no, I don't know if I could name who country artists are when I hear them,
Well, okay, sure. But
so I'm assuming that some people that are country DJs don't necessarily know what Beyonce sounds like. I know it's crazy, but they're,
Well, I mean, and there's also, even within country right now, there's also like, where does country stop and where does Americana start?
Not even that. Where does country stop and where does, just regular pop start?
Yeah.
Because I think that right now the lines are so blurred and I think especially around the country scene, because there's so much that to me just doesn't, I don't know that we really want traditional country. I don't know that that would really work today, but a lot of what happens on radio now is basically just a big pop rock song that may happen to have a fiddle in it or something like that. I don't know how country some of this stuff is. So when I'm asking about, is the Beyonce single convincingly country? There's a lot of other stuff on the country charts that to me isn't convincingly country. So, where does it stop?
If you're looking at like, what do you think traditional country is? The quote, traditional country feels like it's been split off to bluegrass and Americana.
Right.
Or those kind of subgenres. But it's also, I also feel like that's kind of a way for modern country radio to not play Brandi Carlile, to not play Alison Krauss, to not play these artists that traditionally would fit under, or even like the last couple of Dolly Parton records.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it feels like, if you want to call that something else, it feels like a way to be able to skirt around not putting more female artists on the radio, which has been a big problem for country radio for decades, because there's been like the inner thing, like we can only have a certain number of female artists in the playlist, in the rotation at any time.
Right.
And so even then you're looking at not only, did Beyonce have the hurdle of being female?
Yeah.
She also had her ethnicity as part of the equation. And, that's, women aren't getting played on country radio anyway. And the weird thing is, and when Dolly came out and kind of in support of Beyonce, she's the example of it. She's the blueprint, because if you want to be a successful female country recording artist, you have to stop making country music. Dolly had to do it. Carrie Underwood's had to do it. Taylor Swift had to stop doing it.
Who?
Yeah, right. I know.
I don't think Taylor Swift had to do it. I think Taylor Swift wanted to do it. I think
Taylor Swift was following where everybody else went, because,
yeah,
if you there's only a certain amount of airplay you're going to get as a female artist on country radio. And if you want to expand your audience, or you want to sell more records, or you want to reach a bigger audience, you're going to have to go where people will play you. And pop radio is it.
I don't know, man. I feel like Maren Morris and some of these other ladies are getting a lot of airplay on country.
Well, they did it after they had pop singles, though. Like Maren Morris,
Okay.
Maren Morris and those folks are getting
Yeah.
play now on country radio after they went pop and came back.
But okay, maybe. But okay, Casey Musgraves. Has she had any pop success?
I think she's had more pop success than country success.
You think so?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
had more. She's had more top 100 singles on the pop chart than she has on the country chart.
Interesting. This requires.
And I mean, her entire last album cycle was even though it was technically a country album, it was on the pop charts.
Yeah.
Like her last couple of albums have all been kind of skirting the line that way.
Yeah. Which, that brings up another example to me, and that is one of my current favorite new artists, and that's Noah Kahan, who has been big on the alt radio landscape for the past year or so, and now he's being picked up by mainstream outlets, and his a lot of his music is very banjo based, and I don't see that it's that far from something that could be played on a country station. So, but how does he end up in alt radio? You know what I mean? It's like the genres are, I mean, not that there needs to be sharply defined barriers between genres. I don't see that as being a necessity at all. It's just sometimes it's weird where people fall, or how they're marketed by their label.
I guess it's kind of a function of where some of the people in some of those labels fall, because even in the case of Beyonce, when we're talking about the Beyonce track, like country radio stations didn't get the Beyonce song until Wednesday, the Wednesday after the Super Bowl, like 3 days after the drop. Like some pop stations in major markets had it an hour before the drop. And a lot of there's a couple of country stations that did get in early and play it, that went and grabbed a copy from their, like if there was a pop station or an R&B station in their family of stations, they would go get it from them because they weren't getting it, because Sony didn't serve it to them until Wednesday. There were a lot of stations that didn't get in on it early and got hit with some controversy over not playing it because they didn't have it. Yeah. So.
And that tells me that that's the artist sort of putting her foot down, maybe, or artist management, sort of telling the label, "Hey, send this off to country." So,
I mean, if she's recording a country album, certainly that would be her intent.
Yeah.
To get play, to have these things served to country stations,
or at the very least to provoke the conversation.
Yes. Exactly.
Because I think, again, going back to, what she's kind of saying, the point of, especially this part 2 of Renaissance, is to kind of shine a light on the influence that exists in some of these genres that haven't been sort of represented or talked about a lot, or that conversation. So it feels like, well, that's part of having that conversation.
But, it's interesting to look at the number of people who did not start off as country that moved into country, or artists that were known for other things that still worked within the country boundaries at some point. I mean, even going back to Elvis, who is thought of as a rock and roller, but he did gospel, he did some country. And you talk about Ray Charles, he was gospel, country, rock, soul. He was all over the map. So, there's a lot of very, very, very well-established country artists that did not start off as country. And the first one that I always think of is Kenny Rogers, who started off in almost an acid rock band called the First Edition.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to go back and look at what he was doing before making the move into country. You would never think that guy was going to land in country and have the career that he had, based on that early, on the early stuff that he was doing.
And even then, he's doing country stuff, and then he just sort of took that full dive into pop, right?
Oh, sure.
Full on, which, I mean, a lot of people question whether Kenny Rogers is even country now.
But you remember, this was 1980-ish, that movie Urban Cowboy came out, and that's what opened the floodgates to all that crossover stuff. That's what all of a sudden Top 40 Radio wanted, was more country. We want country sounding stuff.
Yeah, that was also when Willie and Dolly made their crossovers.
Yeah.
or kind of happened in sync with that.
Hmm.
I think that kind of felt like, I think some of that was happening before Urban Cowboy, but
Mhm.
the other early example I can think of is like Conway Twitty.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
his early singles, his most of his early singles were more rockabilly, and they I think, what was it, a couple of them were, one of them was like one of the early UK number ones as a crossover single. I did Willie Nelson dabbled in it early when he was
Yeah.
trying to get anything he was writing somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These people who are songwriters, they want to get their stuff recorded and published.
I
Yeah.
mean, and as part of this conversation, the other kind of sub thing that came out of it is, T-Pain has been talking about, hey, I've written country stuff and I have to take my name off the credits because I'm afraid it's not going to get anywhere if I leave my name on it. So
Right. You mentioned Taylor a little bit ago, and
Who?
in the modern radio landscape, everything's going to come back to Taylor at some point. And watching her career is kind of an interesting thing to see the progression, because she starts out very country
Mhm.
and even twangy, and makes that move into more rock based, like the Red album, which was album number 4. She makes that move into more of a rock sound, still very pop, but with much more rock influence in it. And then from that into dance, and in some cases almost electronica, where some of her stuff is so overproduced that you would never think. And it's so weird to watch the Eras show where she starts out with her modern stuff, goes back to her country stuff. The middle of the show focuses on Red, so she's doing more of her rocky kind of stuff, and then back to country, and then back to, and it's just crazy to watch all these different things unfold throughout her career. Where will she go next? No
I think
idea.
she's going to do another country album.
You think so, huh?
I think she's going to go back to country at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Like you said, Midnight's is a Churches record. Midnight was Taylor's take on a Churches record. That's what that album literally is. She did a couple albums with the guitarist from the National.
Yep.
So, and she showed up on a National record. So, she's dabbled in indie folk rock.
Americana. Yeah.
Americana. Also, with Taylor, it's kind of different because she's a kid. And so it's
Still?
kind of natural. Yeah, well, she grew up, let's just say.
Yeah.
She, because she started doing this, like, even when she was writing songs for other people, she was 13?
Right.
So, that's a kind of thing that feels natural, that the same thing that, you want to progress and you may want to find different interests as you grow up. Like, it's the thing we hope for with the kids in the group that sounds like Led Zeppelin. You hope that at some point those guys find their own thing.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the groups that actually don't go out of their lane.
Yes.
And you get a lot of that with some of the harder core rock, because I just think there's a lot of rock audiences that aren't interested in hearing their heroes do anything other than the thing that they do,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very hard to break out of those lanes and to do anything different. And true artists always want to expand, always want to experiment, always want to break into something new and, explore new territory.
And they're always listening to stuff that isn't the thing they're doing.
Always. The first time I ever heard Gene Simmons, and this goes way back, decades back, talk about how much he loved ABBA, I was like, what?
Or Gene tells the story about Disney songs.
Oh yeah, well, he recorded a Disney song on his first solo album in '78,
and his sort of personal connection to like a lot of those songs in those Disney movies.
Yeah,
and he's really like into those. So
there you go. So every artist has lots of different ingredients that have been put into the soup that is what they are, and it's kind of sad to see anybody defined in a strict way to where they can't explore some of these other things. I mean, I always think of AC/DC, like they have never sounded anything other than AC/DC. What did they listen to when they grew up? Did they listen to, there's so many rock British artists that grew up on Motown. Did AC/DC? I don't know, because you never hear anything of that or anything other than whatever sounds like AC/DC in their music.
Yeah.
I think it's just them knowing who their audience
Well, yeah.
is, knowing exactly, because it's also a guessing game, right? Because if you're an artist and you're trying to record an album, they may not be interested in like your 16 songs on the lute. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They may not be, the general audience may not be interested in that, but it's also another thing to kind of know what your audience wants and be able to continue to be interested. And I think in their case, to continue to be interested in like just trying to find new ways to make it sound the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Because that's also a challenge.
Right.
Not as, you know, I guess not as stretching. Not as exercising, maybe, but it is also a talent to like figure out, to know exactly what the people who are into you want from you, and that you can turn it around and give it to them in a near yearly basis.
Right. And, you know, that's the beauty of a solo career. That's where you can break away and do whatever you want to do. And one of the best examples of that is there's a group called Godsmack, which is a hard rock band that I love. I think they're so good. And their lead singer is a guy called Sully Erna, who has gone off and done solo albums with lots of different influences from world music and all kinds of stuff. And it's a fascinating thing to hear the stuff that he's doing on the side as opposed to what he's known for in Godsmack. Mm-hmm. And it's like a movie producer or director who does the big blockbuster so that he can afford to then go off and do his art film, his art project on the side, which is what he really wants to do.
And I think in hard rock, I think of like Serge Turkanian from System of a Down.
Yeah.
Like, have you heard, like his solo stuff is so varied. And so some of it, he's even done like classical pieces. It's so varied and so interesting. From apart from his work from System of a Down and some of the other hard rock things he's done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Trent Reznor is another example.
Yep.
Oh yeah, totally.
He did win a Country Music Award for Writer of the Year for Best Song for Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt, which I believe he accepted with Johnny's son.
What are some other artists that you can think of that are known for their genre hopping?
I'll start with Norman Cook, who a lot of us know as Fatboy Slim, because he started off as the drummer for the House Martins, which is pretty much a band from Hull. It sounded a lot like the Smiths, contemporary of the Smiths and Aztec Hammer and things. And then he changed his name to Fatboy Slim and started DJing and became huge as a DJ. And now he has revived his Marcos musical with David Byrne.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Another guy who likes the genre hop.
Right. Absolutely.
I was thinking Herbie Hancock, actually.
Oh, that's a good suggestion. I didn't think about that.
Like Herbie Hancock and a lot of those guys that came out of the jazz tradition, like Herbie Hancock and like George Benson and some of those guys that flipped into several different genres throughout like the 70s and 80s and just experimentation, which I find is fascinating.
I think in the rock world, the king of this whole thing is Bowie, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, every year or two, he's doing something completely different. And, you know, he was doing lots of stuff before he became famous because his first bunch of singles and first couple of albums didn't do squat, you know. And even the one big hit that he had, Space Oddity, it was years before he had any other success. And that was the Ziggy Stardust stuff. And that's when he really became known. And he was the glam rock guy. And then all of a sudden he was Blue Eyed Soul.
Yeah.
And can you imagine being in that audience at that time? And all of a sudden here comes Young Americans. And then not long after that, here comes Low, which is ambiance. It's the electronica. It's just completely different. I mean, half the album doesn't even have vocals on it. I mean, what a ride that must have been being a Bowie fan at that time.
I mean, the jump from like Aladdin saying to young Americans is staggering.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you haven't seen this, I would highly recommend seeking out the footage of Soul Train. The Soul Train footage.
Yeah.
Because that is like, even people tuning in, that is something you can experience. Like the reactions in the room. I think part of it might have had to do with, okay, maybe he was on something, but
never.
He might have been on something, but just the reaction of like this rocker guy, and I think even Don Cornelius comments on it, like, this rocker guy is on our show.
Yeah.
But the big jump from like to that to Young Americans, but even before that, he was, it was him and Bolin that were kind of in the kind of folky kind of music. And like Bolin's one of those guys that shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where it worked for Bowie that it didn't actually end up working for Bolin was that Bolin couldn't shift back, because he kind of got trapped in a way that Bowie didn't, because Bowie pulled the ripcord maybe a couple of albums early.
And it's also an interesting template, because you get that to a certain extent with Brian Ferry, right? Yeah. Who kind of decides that he's going to give up being glam rock guy to being a new romantic, to kind of going back to being sort of like inspired by R&B, right?
Yeah.
Making Taxi and some of the other stuff he did, So I think a lot of the artists that were in that sort of camp sort of really sort of changed their stripes in many ways, not to be disingenuous, but because they just wanted to. It was organic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And also you can kind of tell on the scope of like Ferry's solo albums that he was doing in between the Roxy stuff.
Yeah.
Where it was a lot of the soul covers and a lot of just all over the place sort of things that kind of ended with, okay, when Roxy took their break, he kind of went full gear into that. And then when Roxy came back, it was still kind of in the mode of a lot of his smoother solo albums.
We've talked once before on one of our previous episodes, I don't remember how far back it was, about the drastic shift between the first Tears for Fears album and the second Tears for Fears album, which is like a complete change in their sound. And like, you would never have thought that they were the same band, other than Roland's voice sounds similar. I mean, look at the evolution of style from the Eurythmics, from their early stuff to the stuff that most people think of when they think of Eurythmics. I remember in one of the quotes that I read when we were interviewing Richard Evans, one of the quotes that I found was that he described early Eurythmic stuff as a mix between Kraftwerk and Motown. The later it goes, it becomes more heavily Motown with a big electric guitar underneath it and live drums instead of a drum machine, So it's interesting to hear the way that they progressed also. It's not necessarily a genre shift, but you can definitely hear the influences in what they're doing change around them.
Yeah. You also get this too. I know we talked about Bowie and a couple other folks, but you also get this with Freddie Mercury with Barcelona.
Yeah.
Except he's doing opera.
Yeah.
Which I think that record has gotten more sort of critical focus in the last 10 or 15 years for being completely different than what it was at the time. It was just kind of seen as a knockoff novelty project thing and not really taken, I think, for what it was. But if you really had any doubts that Freddie Mercury could sing, that's the record that changes your mind.
But look at McCartney. I mean, he's done so many different things, including an oratorio.
Yep.
I mean, whether it's good or not is, different people have different opinions on that matter, whether it's worthy of it, but he did it. I mean, it's an experiment. It's a musical form that he's not known for, that he broke into. And even with Fireman, he's doing things that you would never expect to hear from a McCartney, from a Beatle. He's
doing like experimental electronic music with the bassist from Killing Joke.
Yeah.
Who had that on their scorecards?
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is still pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Also too, Paul Simon, because I remember I am of this age where I think you are too, Alan, when Graceland came out, it was like seismic, the impact of Graceland.
It was.
And he really brought this idea of sort of world or global music to sort of an audience that was not getting it, right? Yeah. It opened up a lot of doors for a lot of foreign musicians like Hugh Masekela and things like this. Were really getting exposure because of Paul Simon. And I think Graceland is sort of an album that like just completely is devoid of like rock and roll. I mean, it's got songwriting and it's got, you know, some folky elements to it, but it's not a rock record.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I just remember people kind of mildly freaking out, like, what is he doing? Everybody wanted, you know, Sound of Silence again, or, you know, Sasua. They just wanted that kind of stuff over and over. And this was really, really left field for the time. It really was.
Yeah.
And, you know, when he performed at the he performed that at the Grammys, that was a spectacle. So.
Yeah. But even the follow up to that, which was 4 years later, I think it was, it came out in 1990, The Rhythm of the Saints, which was very South American influenced and had a whole different sound from what you then thought of from Graceland. I mean, I love both of those records a whole lot. And I didn't at the time. I was so sick of Graceland. Oh my God.
I was too, yeah.
But now I appreciate it in a way that I did not at the time.
Mm-hmm. And I'm the same way with I know we talked about David Byrne, but the Ray Momo record where he's pulling off all the Brazilian stuff. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of along those lines too. But I think it was much more of a landslide when Simon did it. I also think of a lot of this is fairly traditional, but like I remember at the time when Stryper broke and they were considered a Christian band, right? But some of the people that I hung out with that were really into metal were like really into Stryper. Mm-hmm. And then when they found out they were a Christian band, they were like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. Right. So I always think that's kind of an interesting contrast too. I know there's a lot of sort of contrast and stuff with metal artists doing different things, but theirs is an interesting one because they shifted so effortlessly without really announcing it to the world. Right. Yeah. It's just sort of like they still were a Christian band. It's just somehow they got picked up and people loved it, you know.
And even particularly within that genre, you've got Amy Grant.
Yes.
You've got
Katy Perry.
You've got Katy Perry. You've got Switchfoot. You've got
oh my God. Holy cow, Switchfoot! I hadn't thought about that.
You've got hang on, hold on to your hats. Sixpence None the Richer.
Oh, dude, yes, Sixpence were a true CCM band for their first couple of albums, and then made that shift over into pop, even though they still had their Christian roots and they still had their Christian message in a lot of their songs. They then expanded it into, but just like Amy Grant did, expanded it into the pop market. Yeah, man, that's okay. That second Sixpence album is amazing. It is so good. Their first album is okay. The second album blows me away. Just lyrically, musically, everything. It's so good.
There was a minute where Bob Mould got very tired of the music industry, got really tired of playing rock music, basically quit altogether and went to go write wrestling for 2 years. This is true. He was a writer for WCW. And then he came back and he didn't immediately come back to like doing band records. He started DJing. And actually put out a couple of DJ records and also released an album under the Bob Mould name called Modulations, which was a semi-electronica record before he started doing band records again.
Yeah.
Which is a really sort of interesting diversion for him.
Yeah. And I think too, now it's sort of completely second nature. We don't even think of it. And there are people on the planet that don't even remember Oingo Boingo. But when Elfman put out that score for Batman, people were like, man, what is, I mean, that was like, I don't think an artist has gone from being a recording artist to a soundtrack person with such like.
Because like the Pee-wee stuff, you could kind of see, okay, there's Oingo in that.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, clearly with Batman, that was a leap forward.
That was a huge leap. And that led to a lot of other things happening similarly. You know, Trevor Rabin from Yes has had a huge career scoring films. And
Trent Reznor.
Obviously Trent Reznor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Johnny Marr and some of the Hans Zimmer stuff. Clinton Mansell as well.
Yeah. Stuart Copeland.
Yep.
For God's sake. God.
But I also too think of like Moby, who, you know, is pretty much known for being an electronic artist breaking. And then he puts out, you know, an album of rock covers, and he covers, you know, Mission of Burma and Flipper, and kind of makes a punk record and then goes back to being electronic. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's artists like that do some of this too. I think you see the lines in the late 90s and early 2000s getting blurred between sort of like punk and electronic music. getting really blurred in interesting ways. Like I know you talked about Bob Mould, but there's some interesting ways this happens.
Yeah, St. Vincent is one that comes to mind too, because St.
Yeah.
Vincent, especially the last few records, where she basically kind of does the sort of persona change, which is interesting. And apparently, if I'm looking at some of her socials now, she's preparing to do that again on the next record, which may be coming this year, we think, like Daddy's Home.
Yeah.
Where it's completely just shift gears into like something that sounds like something that was, the notation was to make it literally sound like 1974 New York and Times Square, is pretty good, and how to fully replicate and immerse yourself into a genre and a style and sort of an image.
Yeah. Which I think you get that too with Danger Mouse.
Yes.
You know, between Broken Bells and Gnarls Barkley and the 10,000 other things he's on, you get a lot of that with him too. And Damon Albarn is almost the same way, because he's got the record of Molly music, which is him doing music from Molly.
Yep.
And then he's got, you know, Gorillaz and Blur and his solo stuff. And even his first solo record is very steeped in sort of like world music. It's very interesting stuff.
When you think about genre hopping, though, man, you got to go all the way back to Ethel Merman and the glorious disco album from.
Although, yes and no. I mean, yeah, she switched over. Well, but she did it because she was broke and needed money, and they threw a ton of money at her. But again, it's interesting that a lot of these Broadway folks sort of got a second life doing that. It's really kind of fascinating to watch. You know, you see Bing Crosby evolve from being almost a straight up jazz singer to just being like a pop singer.
Yeah.
And so you get some of that stuff, and you get Louis Armstrong going from being a jazz trumpeter to like singing, you know, so you get some of that stuff too. So there are some kind of older examples of it.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean,
or even somebody like Nina Simone, who was just all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't pin her down, and you wouldn't want to either.
Like Nina Simone or Eartha Kitt, man.
Yeah. Eartha. But then you think about, you know, the Barbra Streisand Marvel team up with Donna Summer. I mean, of all things, you know, crazy shit.
I forgot all about that.
Aren't you fortunate?
I'll see you that though with the RuPaul and Elton John cover of "Don't Go Breaking My Heart."
Oh no! Oh gosh,
that's fun though.
I know it's fun, but there is a line between, you know, switching genres and just like cashing in. I think too, you know, you get some of this stuff with artists doing things outside of traditional music though, right? Because you get Green Day with American Idiot. They're writing a musical. The Pet Shop Boys have written a ballet and two musicals, right? So then you're starting to get artists doing plays and dance productions and things, which is also kind of interesting stuff too, because it's such a far turn. Captain Sensible goes from being in The Damned to recording covers of, you know, Happy Talk from South Pacific, right? You get all kinds of just truly bonkers.
Or like Devoto goes from the Buzzcocks to Magazine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, punk from again to kind of post-punk, proto-punk stuff. You get some of that stuff too, and I think that's interesting. But I think, you know, I think American Idiot is interesting. It's not necessarily my thing, but the phenomenon of just it's an album, then it's a musical so quickly was really interesting to see how that happened, and just sort of it was almost like a machine from what I remember of that sort of era. But
you know, when you listen to the original album, there are some things on there that you think, you know, maybe they were thinking 10, 15 years down the road, we can turn this into a musical, because some of the song structures, the big suite on the second half, which is like 9 or whatever minutes long, just sounds like a big finale to a big story that maybe they were actually thinking that all along.
Well, I mean, at the time, you have to remember too, this is when Tommy was running on Broadway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is where they got that idea, because it's like, okay, well now Tommy's on Broadway and Hair's come back a couple of times, and it's just like, oh, we can kind of do this, okay. Would that work? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it is really like, and even the punk guys talk about, well, why did you start doing other things? Like, we found another chord. Because it's the 3 chords, we found some more.
Yeah, there are more out there. All right, so, you know, Beyonce's album will be out soon, and we'll hear more of what she has in store for us on the country scene, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of it. So until then, everybody, feel like you should chime in drop us an email, find us on our socials, and let us know what you think of the new Beyonce record. And does the song, or either song, really speak to you as country? Do you like it? That's what I want to know. So we're going to wrap up our show in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. So don't go anywhere.
Drew Leiter here, inviting you to join Cletus Jacobs and I every week as we dive deeper into the dawn of DC. We review DC Comics, television, movies, and more. We're excited to finish the final season of Doom Patrol, return to Sweet Tooth for its second season, and check out the Netflix series Bodies. Get all your DC news on the Earth Station DCU podcast, part of the ESO Network.
All right, we are back. Something that we haven't really done much of this year is our shout outs. So what have you guys been listening to this past week? I know I just threw Rob a curveball because we haven't done it in so long.
I'll start while he's looking. I've been listening to an album for The Last Dinner Party. They put out some singles last year, making some waves. The album is called Prepare for Ecstasy, and it's quite good. It's a very dramatic. It's kind of the big rock with strings sort of thing, except a little slightly more sinister, so more Bad Seeds Than the Machine, which is really intriguing and really cool. And I like that.
I will say I'm always prepared for ecstasy. Anyway.
There, ladies and gentlemen, obviously there is a new Idols records on the streets. It's called Tank, which which in the discussions for this show, I realized like, oh yeah, T-Rex has an album called that too, but it's spelled differently. It's a great record. It's if you are looking for kind of the hard intense stuff that Idols is known for, it's there. But they're also trying some experimentation and turning some corners that I think are really interesting. And I'm kind of curious to see how they pull off some of this stuff live. So we'll find out later this year when they're around. I'm listening to also the new Brittany Howard record, which is called What Now, which is, we're talking about genre switching, is kind of all over the place. Some of it's R&B, some of it's straight up club records, some of it's kind of a mix of both. It kind of jumps around a lot. It's not unlike her first record, Jamie, which also kind of feels that way too, which I'd also recommend if you want to go back and check that out. But that album's called What Now? And I think I'll leave some stuff on the table. I think Rob's had some time now.
Yeah, well, yeah, sometimes you get that, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start with Unwishing Well from the Reds, Pinks, and Purples, featuring Learn to Love a Band, which is just really fantastic on it. And also Your Worst Song is Your Greatest Hit, which is like just a fantastic bit of pop music. So, yeah, I've been screaming and yelling about the Reds, Pinks, and Purples for about 2 years now, and finally, I think other people are catching on. So that record, also Glasgow Eyes, the new one from the Jesus and Mary Chain. If you're old like me, you get excited about a new Jesus and Mary Chain record, and this one sounds sort of like a more mundane version of their stuff. It's still noisy, but not as it's a little more mature. So I love that. Also, I love the new Beth Gibbons single, Floating on a Moment. Pretty great. So I like that. Camera Obscura, Look to the East, Look to the West. They're another fantastic sort of band that's out right now as well. And if you want something just sort of raw and visceral and sort of like knuckle dragging, the new Kim Gordon record, The Collection. It sounds like a Sonic Youth album sung by like a really angry woman that's gone through a really ugly breakup.
Wow, I wonder where she got that from.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Right. So,
but and speaking of things that sound like country, that new Camera Obscura single is very much a country song.
And they've been leaning that way for a little bit now. But,
totally.
They sort of are a cross between, Tammy Wynette and the Beach Boys in many ways. Right.
Yeah. It's super nice though. The track's called Big Love. If you want to seek it out, it's amazing. It's really good.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that I've been kind of listening to this week a lot is the new Judas Priest single, which came out on Friday. It's called The Serpent and the King. It's the fourth thing that they've put out from the upcoming album, which comes out in March, called Invincible Shield. And it's all been really good stuff. But this new song, Serpent and the King, is so great. I mean, it is just prime Judas Priest. It is so solid, and Rob sounds amazing on it. That being Rob Halford, not our Rob. Although I think that Rob Levy would sound pretty amazing on it too if he were to sing it.
Although that beard's coming in, sir. So,
Right. So, yeah, go check out, if you're a metal fan, go check out the new stuff that Judas Priest is doing. It's really, really solid. And other than that, I've been just studying material for upcoming band rehearsals. So that's been taking up most of my time. All right. So thanks everybody for listening this week. We will be back next week. I don't even know that we have a topic for next week, do we? I don't think we do. We'll have to figure that out. And next week it'll be Rob, Stephanie, and I. So we'll let you know what we're going to be talking about then. Mr. Tuffley, where can people find more about you if they want to track you down and follow what you're doing?
it's always lovely to visit your neighborhood, guys. You can find me, the easiest way to find me, because I am on 7 or 20 social media sites. Most of them you can find me on as Tuffley or JM Tuffley, because somehow I got that lucky. I won that lottery. But you can find me on Linktree/JM Tuffley is probably the easiest and quickest way to get to all of the things. You can also find me on with some program with some gentleman, Rob Levy, occasionally, called Weekend Justice, which is 3 hours of insanity, which you totally need in your life. And that shows up every once in a while when the Babylon stations decide to shift back into reality we're on. So check that out when it appears.
Excellent. All right, Rob.
Hello. I, like Mr. Tuffley, I'm on Linktree, but I need to update the Linktree. Thank you for reminding me, Tuffley. And also a couple different social media things. I'm not on. Are you on Threads, Tuffley?
I am on Threads.
I am not yet on the Threads, but
I'm
on
on
the
Threads,
Insta,
and I haven't done jack shit with it.
I'm on the Insta. I'm on the Facebook, the Twitter, and Blue Sky and Post. So you
is
can find.
Bebo still a thing? I might be on that. I don't know.
I don't even know what the hell that is. So I'm on Greedo. No.
I think I might still be on MySpace when Timberlake took it over. I may still be on that. I don't know.
Really? That'd be cool. Are you on Napster?
Could be.
Yeah. So
I'm Lars's best friend.
Right.
Nice.
Tell him I said hi.
So yeah, you can find me a couple different places. For now, on Wednesdays on KDHX in St. Louis on a show called Juxtaposition. It's on Wednesdays from 7 to 9. If you're not around, you can listen to it on the archive stream, however you want to do that. Or you can listen in real time. All the shows are archived for 2 weeks. Then also Mondays from 6 to 8 Greenwich Mean Time, or 1 to 3 Eastern, 12 to 2 Central, is Antics, which has just had its 1 year anniversary on Louder Than War Radio. So
Woo-hoo!
It's
That's awesome.
46 episodes of me emptying my musical brain and tormenting another continent with that. So that is on. You can listen to that. That is also archived on their Mixcloud page. So you can go through and listen to those. And then just starting now on the Face Radio in Brooklyn is the Free Design, which is my new show on that. It's a physical radio station based in Brooklyn, but they also have an internet presence. They've got me, a guy in Glasgow, and some other folks that do shows. And it's a little different than any of my other shows because I just sort of bounce around genres and make silly. So you can listen to that as well. And
it's a fun toy department to be in.
Yes, it is. So
I do not have a link tree. I just have a website that does the same thing, and it's called Cosmic Creative, KOZMIC creative.com. Go check that out and go listen to my other podcasts, which includes a Doctor Who podcast called Doctor Who A to Z and a Star Trek podcast called Earth Station Trek. So we will be back next week. Everybody join us Mr. Tuffley, thank you so much for
Yes.
hanging out with us once again. We love having you on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate
Anytime,
it.
buddy. All right. Everybody have a great week. Keep rocking on, and we'll see you soon.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.